So we want to see how to solve this linear equation. And the first thing, we notice we have some denominators, so we find the LCD. And the LCD in this case is 5 times 3, which is 15. So you multiply everything by 15. So once you multiply everything by 15, you get 15 times 5 is 75. 15 and that 5 will cancel, will leave you a 3x here. And then 15 and that 3 will cancel to leave you a 5, and so you'll have a 25 left over here and an x plus 2. And then you rearrange some terms, you get 75. And you'll have minus 3x, you distribute the 25, you get a 25x, and then plus a 50, and then move around some things here, so you have 75 minus 50 is 25, equals 25, you add a 3 is 28, x, so therefore x is 25 over 28. And that's your solution. So now this is another problem we want to solve for x. And again, it involves an LCD. The LCD again are those expressions that you have in the denominator, a product of them or a multiple of them. So I have a 5 and an x plus 1. So my LCD is 5 times x plus 1. So I multiply everything by 5 times x plus 1. And what happens is the x plus 1s will cancel here. So I'm left with 5 times x plus 4. Right, so that would cancel that. And the 5 would cancel with this 5, and I'm left with the x plus 1 on top. So plus x times x plus 1 equals, and the x plus 1 will cancel with this, leaving me a 5. So I'll have a 5 times 2x plus 5. And you expand everything, so we have a 5x plus a 20 plus an x squared plus an x equals a 10x plus a 25. You move everything to one side, so you get x squared. Then you move the 5x plus x is 6x, minus 10x is minus 4x, and 20 minus 25 is minus 5 equals 0. And then you factor, and you get an x, a 5, and a 1, and you need a minus 5 and a plus 1 equals 0. And then so x is equal to 5, and x is equal to negative 1. However, remember, in our original, we had x plus 1 in the denominator, and so x cannot equal negative 1. If you look at that, the original problem, so x equals negative 1 is not a solution. So my only solution is x equals 5. Okay, with this equation, you have roots. So you want to make sure you have a root on each side, which we do. So the first thing you want to do is you want to square each side to get rid of at least one of the roots. So you square the left side, you get x plus 1. However, you square the right side, that's a foiling. That's 3 minus square root of 4 minus x times 3 minus square root of 4 minus x. So you get 3 times 3 is 9. And remember, let's think of it as 3 minus square root of 4 minus x times 3 minus square root of 4 minus x. That's what we're doing. So 3 times 3 is 9. Then you're going to have FOIL, so it's going to be minus the root times 3. And then in the inner product will be minus the root times 3 again. So you have minus 6 times that square root of 4 minus x. And then the final product is minus the root times minus the root. Well, the root undoes itself, and then you have a plus, just 4 minus x. Alright, now you combine some stuff. On the left side, x, you're going to add x to both sides on the left side, so you end up with a 2x. You have a 9 plus a 4 here is a 13, but you're going to subtract it from 1. So 1 minus 13 is minus 12 equals, then you'll have this negative 6 square root of 4 minus x. So however you combine is fine, just be careful with your signs. And then you square both sides again. You could divide it by 2, you could simplify, but I'm just going to square both sides again. So on the left side now, again, this is a FOIL, right? So you have a 4x squared. 2 times 2 is 4, and x times x is x squared. And then you'll have a negative 12 times 2x and a negative 12 times 2x, so that's 24. Negative 24, but you're doubling it, so it's negative 48 times x, and then plus a 144, and that's equal to, if you square this, negative 6 squared is 36, and then you'll have 4 times x because the root undoes itself. So on the right side we can simplify a little bit more, and on the right side we'll have 36 times 4, which is 144, minus 36x, and I'll rewrite this here. And finally bring everything to one side. So we'll have the 4x squared minus 48x plus 36, because I'm moving it to the left side. Add 36x to both sides. That would give me a minus 12x. 144 minus 144 is 0, so that goes away, and we get equals 0. So here's my quadratic equation. For this one, you don't need to use a formula. It's easy factorization. You could just factor out a 4x, and you're left with x minus 3. Okay, so equals 0. So what does that tell me? X equals 0, and x equals 3. From these two, 4 times x is 0, so x must be 0. X minus 3 is 0, so x must be 3. Those are my two possible solutions. So we have to go back to the original, and we have to check this, because a root equation, when you square both sides, you might be changing the properties. If I stick 0 in here for x, I get a square root of 1, which is 1. So if we're thinking x equals 0, we get a 1 on the left. And on the right, we get, well, a 3 minus 4 minus 0. So 3 minus square root of 4 is 2, is 1. So that works out. And actually, what I'm going to do here is just erase what we had here. And now we check x equals 3. If I put 3 plus 1, that's 2. 4 square root of 4 is 2 on the left side, and 4 minus 3 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1, so 3 minus 1 is 2. So that works. So they're both solutions to the root equation. So you want to solve this absolute value equation. And you have 4 plus the absolute value of x plus 4 over 3 is greater than or equal to negative 2. So one of the problems here is I have this 4. So what do I do with it? The big mistake is to try and deal with the absolute value right away. You want to subtract 4 from both sides before you do anything. Get the absolute value by itself. So we're left with x plus 4 over 3. Right? You subtract 4 from both sides, so that gives you greater than or equal to negative 6. Now you can get rid of the absolute value, and when you get rid of the absolute value, you get two inequalities here. So the first inequality is you just drop the absolute value symbol. So we have x plus 4 over 3 greater than or equal to negative 6. The second absolute value inequality becomes x plus 4 over 3, and you flip the inequality and you change the sign. Okay, so you do two things. You flip the inequality and you change the sign. So now you multiply both sides by the denominator 3. So let's deal with this one here. So we have x plus 4 is greater than or equal to negative 18. And then you subtract 4 from both sides, so you get x is greater than or equal to negative 22. And then on this side here, you get x plus 4 is less than or equal to 18. And then you subtract from both sides, you get x is less than or equal to 14. So these are my two solutions. X is greater than or equal to negative 22 or less than or equal to 14. And so that gives me an interval of negative 22 to 14.